Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for our next Meet the Funder session. I've got David Ball with me. Thank you for joining, David.
Thanks so much, Raul. It's a pleasure to be here.
From Second Muse Headstream Accelerator. We're really excited to talk more about this. I just want to kind of set the stage a little bit and let folks know what we've got going on. So if you've been here with us for the last couple of days, this is part of the Meet the Funder series, which is exactly what it sounds like, right? Games for Change over the course of the year gets lots of messages from folks at various stages of development who are really curious, right, about the funding process, be that through private equity or even through federal grants, right? So we've set up opportunities to connect with funders directly, hear from them, hear about their priorities, hear about their processes, and really just kind of demystify the process a little bit. So that's what we're going to try and do today. I want to encourage you all to not only view and hear what we're saying, but certainly the opportunity here is to be very conversational. So please be sure to comment or drop questions in the session chat that you'll see over here on the right. David can respond directly to those. I'll be here just to kind of moderate some of the discussion as well. If you'd like to, you can also request to kind of join the panel temporarily and ask your question in person. But text works perfectly fine too. So I think with that, David, take it away and let us know what you've got going on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Raul, and for everybody out there. Thank you for taking the time on a busy Thursday to jump in and join us. I hope that the last 2 days have been enjoyable. It's been really neat to get to see all of the different innovations out there, as well as all of the other folks working in this space. My name is David Ball, as Raul mentioned. I'm the director of Headstream, and we're an accelerator powered by the innovation agency Second Muse. Been around for about 2 years now, and I'm going to share a little bit of slides, a few slides, and we'll walk through those quickly just to give you an overview of our program, our accelerator, and the funding opportunity. I'm particularly interested in hearing from folks that may be interested in joining our second cohort, as well as all the other folks across the community that really make up the impact that we're trying to have as a program. So give me a sec here. Let's see if this works. All right, awesome. Looks like you all can see that. So about 2 years ago now, Headstream started. And what we really wanted to dig into was understanding how social technologies, things like video games, things like streaming services, social media, was impacting young people as they were growing up. So we spent about a year or so really digging into understanding this question. There we go. And that meant going out and talking to hundreds of people, talking to entrepreneurs, talking to investors, talking to policymakers, to teachers, especially talking to young people, really getting a sense from young people how they were spending their time online and in digital spaces, and going back and trying to figure out, as we've evolved over the last 10 years to really be integrated, our lives to be integrated with digital spaces and with digital technologies, what has changed or what's a little bit different, both in a positive and potentially in some of the negative consequences that we've seen as well. I think if you look at the narrative around social technologies, whether they're video games, going back historically for a while now, there's a negative kind of narrative around that in many places, and whether from parents or from mass media, and that started to extend to social media places, to streaming services, whether it's the amount of time that young people are spending on them, whether it's the privacy and security concerns that are popping up. But there's also some pretty amazing places and ways that young people are using the internet and digital technologies. I think as COVID has become a norm in our lives, more adults are turning to young people to understand how they're using digital places to connect, right? How they're using it as a way to think about their own mental well-being, to think about it as a way to get some of the nourishment that we need to kind of grow up and to sustain and to live healthy lives. For us, we as a program really wanted to find innovators and entrepreneurs that were working in these positive places, right? That they were building opportunities for young people to have meaningful connections, that they were building opportunities for social and emotional learning within a video game, as an example, that they were building opportunities for young people to deal with some of the hard things about growing up, like a first breakup, like feeling lonely, like making that adjustment from going from high school to college. So we started an accelerator, and we started an accelerator with the support of Pivotal Ventures, which is Melinda Gates's investment company. And what we were really looking for was to run an accelerator that wasn't as traditional as just going out and making sure that folks were raising money, that folks were finding as many customers as possible, that they were scaling their users at an unsustainable rate. But we wanted to make sure that we built an accelerator that cared about what we've cared about as a program and what we care about as a company. And that's really social and environmental impact. And so for us, we really built this accelerator with a couple of groups of young people in mind. We really wanted to build for Black, Indigenous, and other young people of color. We really wanted to build for the LGBTQIA community. We really wanted to build for teen girls. We can share some of the research on our website that goes into the reasons that we identified those three communities in particular as communities that really weren't being served by entrepreneurs in this space. We also really wanted to build for teens. We saw an opportunity to dig in and work with teenagers as a specific market. And that, if you look at it from a business perspective, is a really tough market. But I saw an opportunity as a form of impact capital, as a program to support entrepreneurs to really dig in to that space. So we brought in 16 entrepreneurs into our inaugural cohort. If folks have been on today, they may have seen a panel with some Headstream innovators earlier and had a chance to meet with Ty and Vanessa and Amy and Maria, 4 of the 16 entrepreneurs who have been part of this cohort. I wish they could be here because they would do such a better job of explaining the experience from the perspective of an entrepreneur. But these 16 entrepreneurs really cover 3 of the main categories that we work with as part of this accelerator. We look at social technologies, like I mentioned, video games, social media, streaming services, chat services, both platforms themselves, as well as plugins and tools that can go into existing platforms. You saw Vanessa, who has a video game called Ava that supports autistic youth. You met Maria, whose Innovation Gamer Safer improves the gaming experience through an improved login experience. We also work in the education tech space. So folks like Ty, who you met from Equipped, whose innovation is a game that helps young people think about the intersectionality of identities and how that identity converts and works through their own through themselves as they're growing up. And then the third category is digital health. So folks like Amy from Keep Appy, whose app provides young people with a mental health gym and a gamification way of doing it in a fun and kind of engaging method instead of kind of, maybe the rogue mental health type of solution that a lot of folks have seen. So really excited about these 16 innovators who've been participating over the last 4 months in the accelerator program. They'll be in it for another 2 months or so before we open up applications for the second cohort. So a couple more things just to talk about, and then I'll get into the specifics of the accelerator itself. Our mission and our goals at Headstream encompass a lot. And again, it's not just about business success. That is certainly something we want to drive to because we want to help you grow solutions that are impactful, and we want to ensure that there's sustainability, and that takes some sort of kind of commitment to raising funds, to customer acquisition, and we definitely support that with that. But we also care about building solutions for communities that can sometimes be ignored. I talked a little bit about supporting Black and Indigenous and other youth of color, talking about teen girls and LGBTQIA communities as well. It's not just the communities that we work with as far as solution oriented. We also really focus in on entrepreneurs who have lived experiences. As a program, we value lived experiences above everything else. And bringing those experiences into the program is something that we value and we measure, and we select based on those priorities as well. We also want to take an evidence-based approach. And so we invest heavily in research. If you end up participating in the second cohort, you'll have an opportunity to work with us on the development of a new impact measurement tool. This is a tool that's going to be built in conjunction with impact investors, and an opportunity for you to be self-reflective and look at ways to use impact as a way to improve your own innovation, as well as a way to engage with different investors in this space. We aren't searching for the next company that will make billions and billions of dollars, but as I said, we do want our entrepreneurs to be successful so that they can be sustainable and scale their solutions to a lot more people as well. So here's the timeline for the second accelerator. We will open up our challenge, the application period, in September. You'll have about 2 months or so to complete that application. There'll be a number of touch points during those 2 months to get a little bit more information. You can email me at david.ball@secondmuse.com. That's up at the top of the chat. Or feel free to email us as well at hello@headstreaminnovation.com. For us, we'll move into the start of the accelerator at the beginning of December, and that accelerator will run 5 months until the end of April. And so is your innovation a fit? Let's see. Are you working on a digital innovation for young people in the areas of social tech, ed tech, or digital health? It's a pretty broad range. So we're happy to kind of go through a couple of examples today if there's folks that want to see if they're a good fit to kind of test that out. Are you past the idea phase? So I know many of you are probably at a stage where you've got, I got a great idea for what could be built, or want to plug in and meet some new folks to build something together. We're a little bit past that idea stage in what we search for as a program, but we do work with a wide range after that. So if you've got, at the very least, something built and something that's ready to get into the market, or you need the support of an accelerator to take that from a prototype, let's say, or a beta product and turn that into a full-fledged market-based product, this accelerator will work for you. Likewise, if you're a little bit more developed, you've raised funds already, you're maybe looking for a Series A as an example, you're also still a really good fit. We work to customize our curriculum to the different needs of each one of the innovators in our program. And so for us, that means that we're open to taking a wide range of entrepreneurs at different stages of development. Do you have a sustainable model? And what I mean by that is not necessarily are you a for-profit company, but more do you have a sustainable revenue source? The simplest way to kind of go about that and to kind of distinguish that is, are you dependent on grants or donations? And if so, you might not be the right fit for us. But if you're a nonprofit, but you have a sustainable and steady revenue stream, and that revenue stream just gets fed back into the program or gets donated somewhere else, that's fine with us as well. And then the last one is, are you working with young people in the US? It is totally okay if you're based outside of the US. In that cohort of 16, we have 3 innovators based outside, one in Ireland, another in New Zealand, and another in Australia. But they're all working with customers or a user base that's based in the US, in addition to other places as well. So that's one of our main criterias. And so what are the benefits of the accelerator? You will receive non-dilutive capital, so kind of like an award, 15 to 30,000 if you're selected to participate. You'll participate in this 5-month program, which includes a curriculum every month built around understanding your impact pathway, inclusive design, working with young people, how to acquire funding, and a lot more. You'll have an individual advisory board made up of potentially 2 young people, as well as professional advisors, curated for your specific needs. So if you're working in schools, we will find you folks that are experts in business sales into schools, or educators who understand the needs of young people. So we'll work with you to customize that. There'll be multiple events over the course of those 5 months that are really curated to getting you support and access to the needs that you're looking for. And you also have access to a network of over 1,200 folks ranging from policymakers, investors, school systems, health sector experts, a ton of young people that we work with through some of our youth programs. And so a really neat opportunity for you to engage with a broad community. So I'll stop there and would really love to kind of hear from the folks that are listening. Raul, I'll use you as the barometer for what I went through too quickly or what might not have made sense, to give me a chance to try those areas again. But again, thanks so much, and would love to hear from folks that may be a good fit for the Headstream Accelerator, whether you're an entrepreneur, as well as potential partners. We as a company and as a program are built on the knowledge and built on the expertise of all of you in this community. So would welcome all folks and all sorts of questions now. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David. I mean, that was a stellar run through. Even if it was brief, I mean, you packed it all in, so thank you. I do want to start kind of a bit earlier on, and I've just dropped the URL, which seemed to be a little hidden from that last slide, just to headstreaminnovation.com in there. I'll mention, or rather, I'll start with one of the pieces that I saw on the timeline, specifically with regard to the application. Like, can you just highlight really what folks can expect from that application process? You laid out a 2-month timeline with multiple touch points. I wonder if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first stage will be a written application. It'll be a fairly standard approach, covering a lot of the areas that I mentioned today, right? So again, we will dig into some of the business metrics, making sure that you're eligible, and then we'll also really explore the impact that you want to have with young people, as well as with those communities that traditionally haven't been served, and wanting to understand how you're integrating that into the work that you're doing. We will weed down and use that application as a first parameter. We will bring in a pool of so for the first cohort, we had about 60 external reviewers from our community, ranging from across the different sectors and expertise to evaluate and help us weed down to about a pool of about 35 innovators or so that we'll do a one-on-one interview with. And so that video interview will be an invitation for kind of the second stage. And then after that video interview, we will take the top innovations to a group of young people, and they will ultimately be the final judges. We will place your innovation in their hands. We will see how they react, what kind of feedback. You can see on our social channels an example of that, and how they engaged. And to be honest, that is such a great barometer to see, like, if what you're building, and this is a recommendation for all entrepreneurs, right, to listen to those young people and to learn from them. And we certainly take that into account when we do our own evaluation stage. And then we'll kick off at the start of December with the first month of programming.
That's stellar. I mean, I love to hear that, as an organization, y'all have really tried to embed this youth perspective and this attention to a very specific subset of the market, right? That it's, as you mentioned, it's tough. I wonder whether or not you can elaborate a bit more on those three subsets of this community that y'all are trying to highlight, particularly with teens, BIPOC teens, LGBTQIA folks. How did you come to land there? You mentioned some research that kind of drove that decision.
Yeah, so we spent about a year through our research process, and that involved starting by a number of conversations, as I mentioned, and it also involved building out a causal loop systems map. And I can link that to, if you give me a sec, to that document in the chat so that folks can take a look. But that pointed us to a couple of key areas, and we narrowed down to about 6 key areas that we had identified as ways that young people were, for lack of a better term, kind of missing out as they were spending more times in digital spaces. And not intentionally missing out, but just because of the creation of what digital places and digital experiences have become, they weren't built to fill the need that that human interaction and one-on-one interaction had for a long time. So that really helped us narrow down to focusing in on helping to support meaningful connections in digital places, to support the development of things like self-confidence, protective factors, and then also to develop, like, how do we address trauma in the moment, or even if it's small or even potentially large. But to get to your question, Raul, like, we came with those 3 areas and we nailed it down. And we brought this to a group of about 30 folks, one group of 30 in San Francisco, another group of 30 in New York. And we asked them what was missing. And they said, you're taking this from a very high level lens of how to address well-being in young people, but you're not focusing on the folks that are most in need. And that really led us to have a broader kind of understanding of, okay, if we are focusing on solutions, like, what do we as a program, with the opportunity to take kind of a patient approach and to support innovators who are not being pressured by the needs of an economy or of a VC investor to grow and scale at rapid paces, but wanting to integrate a more caring and a more impactful approach into our work. What could we do? And so we wanted to test the hypothesis, and this is something that we believe, and we've heard really positive things, although, like, it's still something up for debate, that if you're building with a specific underserved community or a marginalized community, like, take for example Indigenous youth, if you're able to build for that smaller community, right, it doesn't seem like a mass market that a major investor would be drawn to, but if you're able to build for that specific community and show metrics that you've been successful and get a lot of traction with that community, that impact will translate to these broader markets, to these larger groups. So it was twofold, right? It was a strategic hypothesis from our end that this was an approach that could be really impactful, but and as in much of the work that I've done in my career and the work that we do at Second Muse, there's always kind of this hidden nugget, right, in a business argument, that there's also going to be impact, right? And so in many cases, to get the type of impact that we want, you have to hide it through, you have to kind of guide it or use the Trojan horse through some sort of a kind of a business method. But in this case, we thought that we were going to be able to achieve both at the same time.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm so glad to hear that kind of integrated, and seems to be sparked not only from an internal feeling or nudge that like comes from just your sensibility, but is being informed by the folks that you're interacting with, and certainly by the communities that you're hoping to impact. So that's great. I'm hoping to, or rather, I have a video question here from Doug. Doug, so I'll bring you on in a moment here, and you can ask your question to David. Hi, Doug.
Doug?
So I want to reiterate, I'm here because the panel of your current cohort were just absolutely so complimentary and enthusiastic about the value they're getting from Headstream and all the different ways that you've really helped move them forward. It was very inspiring to hear. I want to thank you too for being so explicit about your acceptance criteria. That's really helpful. And I want to ask a question about beyond the idea stage. I understand that conceptually, are you looking for, let's say, a prototype, proof of concept? Are you looking for an MVP that's launched and gotten some traction? Are you looking for an MVP that's launched and gotten some traction and we've actually done some analytics around impact? Kind of how far along after idea are you looking for to make the best use of the accelerator?
Yeah, so thanks for that, for helping me clarify that a little bit. And since you were in the last session, and I imagine there's folks that weren't, but we'll use this as an example. So Ty McRae, who has an amazing innovation called Equipped, right? She started the innovation program with a proof of concept that had been tested through her experience in her career and the experience of her co-founders in a number of different scenarios with there was a paper product for a thing that will ultimately be a digital game, but there was something that had tested the concept, tested the idea, and there was a clear pathway that over the next 5 months through the accelerator, they would be building that product. So for us, that was enough. So I think to answer your question, like pretty early in the stage of development, but beyond the stage of like they had formed a team, right? And so there's never going to be there's always going to be a little bit of leeway, right? But if it's it's okay if it's not your full-time job yet. We're not gonna judge you because of that, because being an entrepreneur is a privilege in many senses, and sometimes you have to keep that full-time job to be able to support and follow those passions. But there was enough evidence there with Ty as an example that there was a really solid proof of concept, there was a really solid and committed team, and there was a plan to really start building over the course of our accelerator.
That's super helpful. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. We've got a question here from John. Can you clarify the qualification of sustainability? If someone needs funding, is that a disqualifier?
Thanks, John. So no, not at all. And so I appreciate the chance to clarify that. We come in with the expectation that for almost all of the entrepreneurs in our cohort, funding is going to be a top priority. And I think if you were in the last session with the other folks, and I promise I won't only talk about that last session for fear of missing out for the folks that weren't there. But they all at the end nodded that, yes, they're looking for funding, right? What we want to make sure is that you're not just using your ambition as an organization or as a company is not just to be self-sustained around donations or grants. We really want what we call market-based approaches. So that means that you have a revenue stream or multiple revenue streams that you can count on or you're building towards sustainably over the long period of time. So if that means that you're going to do it through direct sales to a customer, or if you're going to sell into education systems, but you're not going to turn a profit and you're a nonprofit, that's totally okay. I think we want to avoid that you're solely going to depend on going out and looking for philanthropic donations or looking for grants as the model to keep your idea and your solution afloat.
Thank you for that, Tim. I'm wondering, David, also if you can speak a bit more toward the relationship, right, between Second Muse and Headstream as entities, right? Like, what's the Is there an expectation that folks who go through Headstream will be able to kind of enter a more formal relationship with Second Muse and that family product, or how's that work?
Yeah, good clarification. And I haven't talked much about Second Muse, but Second Muse is the parent company of Headstream. So Second Muse is an innovation agency with offices across the U.S. as well as in Singapore, Indonesia, and Australia. And through the company, we run 18 different innovation programs around the world right now, focused on things like the youth well-being and the challenge and intersectionality with technology. We run it around the prevention of ocean plastics in Asia and South Asia. We run it around economic development in second-tier cities like Battle Creek, Michigan, like Fort Myers, Florida. So a number of different programs that we run simultaneously around the world. Our commitment to you all as Headstream and as the parent company Second Muse is for the 5-month accelerator, and that is something where we will really focus in and make sure that you're successful. Once you graduate out of the accelerator, you become a part of our community and part of our network, and so that may mean things like being an advisor. That mean things like coming back and sharing your expertise on a particular subject, and definitely you will remain a part of the program, but not in a concrete or official way.
I mean, it's great to see that you're able to leverage, what is a growing community for kind of the continued growth of the accelerator, right? You mentioned, I think the second to last slide that you shared, just kind of laying out like what are the benefits of really taking part, right? Mentorship's a big part of that, having the ability to get that one-on-one with folks at Headstream who've got experience, but also maybe others that have that will have gone through it already. All of that seems particularly valuable to somebody who's at a nascent stage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that like really warmed my heart with one of the other innovators said was that like the human touch. And I think that plays out in our accelerator in a number of ways. One, we're focused on the well-being of young people, but we also care about your well-being. And so we want to create a program when it's very relationship-based, both in the interactions you have with the team at Headstream as well as with each other, because we do believe that the peer learnings and the peer support is going to go farther than we could ever take that. But we also, care about building and wanting to become like close and tight with you all. And so that's something that we really value and we put a big emphasis on. So I appreciate you giving me the chance to talk a little bit about that. And I do think it's way that it may seem a little bit different from other accelerators that have, a pretty standard curriculum, and work towards that. Whereas we really customize to the individual needs of each one of our innovators.
With the couple of minutes that we have left, right, I'm curious to just kind of like tease it a little bit. Whether I encourage you to speak specifically to the first cohort, if you wouldn't mind. But I'm curious, like we've now have spent the last 4, 5, 6 months kind of in this global context with COVID, obviously. I'm wondering if there's been any direct impacts to the accelerator because of some shifts, logistical shifts, right, that have just needed to take place, be that work from home or otherwise. But on top of that, I'm wondering whether or not you're seeing proposals or other things kind of come across your desk, either in the form of totally new products or maybe even pivots with the folks that you've got with the first cohort.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think this actually helps answer one of your questions, John, about residency. We have designed a program that's virtually based. So everybody's participating from their own location. That being said, I think we missed it by a week. We had a major week-long event planned for March 12th, and we ended up having to delay that, cancel that now, to the point where we weren't able to have those in person. So we've been able to adapt and move to a fully virtual program. What we've started to notice is a couple things. One is a lot of our folks are using school systems or education systems as a means for their main customer base, and that's been a tricky one, just because of budget cuts and needing to adapt to virtual learning. I think it's still a really massive opportunity, but one that we're still adapting to. Another one is that our entrepreneurs who are mainly focused on young people, have been started to get pulled in different directions to work with adult populations as well. And so how can their solutions, the ones that aren't necessarily completely designed for a younger audience, and our audience, Dove, is for 13 to 24-year-olds is our target range. And so for that audience, like, can some of the learnings and some of the innovations be pulled for different uses as well? So in some ways that has opened up the opportunities for them. We've spent a lot of time both on how to respond to COVID, when it makes sense to pivot, how to be opportunistic, as well as a lot of time on the work around anti-racism and anti-oppression that's going on, and ensuring that that is being built in and thought about, and their responses are being built into the work that they do. So it has been an incredibly emotional and challenging 4 months for everybody, right? Including our innovators. And it's been something that, as a team of educators at Headstream, we've been privileged in many ways to be able to kind of create an environment and a space where folks can think about this with a cohort of peers.
Amazing. Well, so that's the short half hour that we've got with you, David. I mean, thank you so much for that. I think we can just clarify Dove's question here real quick. I believe it was more the latter, or sorry, the former. So I want to just thank you once again for spending time with us and sharing the story. I'm personally really looking forward to seeing the stuff coming out of this first cohort, and again, the continued growth of the project. Your commitment to servicing these populations is truly admirable. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Rael. And yeah, if anybody does want to reach out, feel free to send an email at david.ball@secondmuse.com. Would love to hear from you all, and thanks for taking the time to join us.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.
All right. Cheers.